Let's be clear about this. Digital ID, as is now being planned by our freedom-hating government, can have no useful purpose for the average citizen. It will have only one purpose, and that is to control so that our government can exclude, silence, threaten, punish, and ultimately kill any citizen that holds any view that is contrary to establishment policy. It's been a little late coming, but George Orwell's bureaucratic nightmare, 1984, is now upon us. Freedom of speech is under attack like never before. If the evil ones win that battle, freedom of thought and opinion will be next. During the Blair regime of the 1990s, our great leader coined the phrase joined-up government, a phrase very similar to the lies now being propagated by the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. That similarity exists because once again Blair, in the form of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, is taking another crack from beyond the political grave at curtailing human freedom. From the 1990s onwards, these are just some of the national institutions that the shadow class has woven into their spying network. It's by no means exhaustive. National health records, tax records, the border force, note the name force, the police force with their national computer, the Department for Work and Pensions databases, council tax, local authority records, education records, Companies House, which is the people who own companies, DVLA, digital vehicle licensing records, the Department of Health and Social Care. These are just a few of the government organisations already keeping files on us and is collecting that data and transmitting it back to central government. Obviously, organisations such as MI5 and MI6 have their own computers, which are connected to Interpol, the credit card agencies, and the massive spy systems run by the Americans. Then we have the quizzling organisations, now partly controlled by government, such as the banks, solicitors, estate agents, and Tesco Club Card. You think I'm joking? The tax department has recently been leaking information to the effect that AI has now been set up within HMRC so that it can correlate an individual's lifestyle and much more across all aspects of daily lives. So you better not tell lies to the tax department. So I ask the question, what possible good reason could the government have to introduce digital ID? They already are in possession of nearly all the information that they could possibly want. And these combined systems can already flash a red light if a non-citizen tries to use a service to which they're not entitled. So we're back to the issue, what is the purpose? And it can only be oppression. It's the movies, the Minority Report, and Trading Places all rolled into one. The police and the government are already picking off individuals. The purpose of digital ID is to automate the process and exclude people on an industrial scale. The most famous case of debanking was NatWest closing down Nigel Farage's bank account because the bureaucrats there didn't approve of his political views. Unbeknown to us at the time, a few other Conservative MPs had suffered the same fate, but they'd kept quiet about it. Totally innocent people who have done nothing wrong are now being detained by MI5 or Special Branch because their views and opinions differ to those of the establishment. And it's long been the case that people are having cash taken off them because the government has arbitrarily declared that cash which cannot be tracked is equivalent to being involved in some kind of criminal conspiracy. Yet the government has allowed itself to seize cash without actually having to prove any criminal activity. So once again we see the state shadow class has simply found a way to skirt round any law in order to enrich themselves. Quite literally, they have legalized thieving. Some while ago, in response to a rare challenge from Her Majesty's Press, North Wales Police were asked why it was that roadblocks had been appearing across the region. The police reply was, and I quote, "Criminals drive cars, so the way to tackle crime is to stop cars." Motor vehicles down through the years have been incrementally used by the police to erode the rights and freedoms of British citizens. The police have somewhat limited powers to arrest anyone they choose if that person is simply walking down the street. But as a police sergeant in Wandsworth once said to me, I quote again, "If you drive a car, own a car, are a passenger in a car, know someone who has a car, or you're standing next to a car, we can always find an excuse to nick you." And he wasn't being horrible about it, being factual. The institution malevolence has now extended to people on benefits who travel abroad. While I personally have reservations about people being subsidised to go on holiday by the taxpayer, that's not the argument I'm having at the moment. The fact is, computerised tracking systems are wrongly recording people who travel abroad as though they've emigrated because the computer isn't recording them coming back properly. And that's another example of the fallibility of computer systems. To date, there's never been a new computer system introduced by any government department that has not seriously malfunctioned. More than a few have had to be scrapped completely as a consequence of inherent design faults. And the words post office scandal comes to mind at this point. Imagine, therefore, the damage that can be caused by an all-embracing digital ID system that has the power to automatically switch off a person's entire existence. Now, our government quotes India and Estonia as being digital success stories, so let's have a look at that. Estonia introduced digital IDs because it considers it has a potential legacy problem with Russians who were deliberately settled in their country in the days of the old Soviet Union. And turning to India, there's been a scandal labelled digital exclusion involving individuals starving to death. And I quote from the press reports. Leprosy patients being denied pensions. A visually impaired schoolboy was denied enrolment into the system. Families in rural India were pushed into starvation as system glitches left them unable to access food rations. It created middlemen who asked for bribes just to enrol people into a system that now held inordinate power over every aspect of their lives. Is this really a club we want to join? Our shiny new digital ID system was contracted out to a Romanian company in order to have it built. Initial basic safety checks were carried out when it was delivered, and it was found to be riddled with very basic schoolboy errors, backdoors, major security flaws, and that was at first glance. Imagine what determined and patient hackers could do with such a system. Last year I had to spend a few days in London and I needed to enrol my vehicle in the Transport for London low emission system. No sooner had I returned than I read in the papers that their computer system had been hacked and huge amounts of information had been stolen. I rang them up and I said I wanted my credit cards removed, and they said, yes, we'll remove your credit cards, but all your other data, by law, has to remain on the computer system. I didn't know that when I signed on. It subsequently was reported that 2 teenagers from West Midlands were responsible for the hack, and it had caused £39 million worth of damage. So the idea of a national government-run computerised digital system would be laughable if it were not so serious. I've talked about design faults, incompetency, amateur hackers, but what about an inside job? A couple of years ago, I received an erroneous complaint from the tax department, and it was subsequently ironed out because they claimed an operative was looking at the wrong file that they had on me. However, while dealing with the issue, I began to receive texts on my phone, allegedly from the tax office, from a person who knew exactly the substance of my correspondence. One text said, "We have commenced a criminal investigation. You must telephone the following number within the next 24 hours to discuss the matter." I laughed when I read it, but many people would have hit the call button straight away. HMRC and the DVLA and Department of Work and Pensions are all riddled with criminal gangs with inside information. When I reported the message to the tax office, I was fobbed off with the statement, "It wasn't from us." There was no statement of shock or surprise. The government long ago lost control of their many administrative departments, and they know it. So there we are. Digital ID is a scheme devised by people who are as evil as they are incompetent. And so, within the bounds of their self-serving laws, we have to find a way to resist this evil that is being thrust upon us.